The Browns are ready to handle the pressure that comes with having Shedeur Sanders in your quarterback room. I'll explain why coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Browns are well equipped to handle the outside pressures that come with having Shedeur Sanders on the roster right now. If there was any hope left for a Nick Chubb return, it is officially over. And thank God for Carson Schwesinger. I do want to thank you for being out every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making it your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with some bonus content on certain days and over the weekends at times as well. And it's totally free to you. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. And, of course, the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. Whenever you have a rookie quarterback that is stepping into onto a team or into a quarterback room or onto a roster, there is almost always this outside noise that mounts. It's a groundswell that grows ever louder and larger that fans want to see that guy play. It happens all the time. It especially happens for teams that don't have a franchise quarterback, drafted quarterback that has a lot of potential or people are excited about, and you're sort of just trying to bridge the gap maybe for a year or whatever. Sound familiar, by the way? I think it does. And then there's this polarizing figure sort of waiting in the wings to take over and potentially be your franchise quarterback. We've seen that here in Cleveland numerous times. Johnny Manziel comes to mind. Other rookie quarterbacks, Brandon Weeden, even though he was an older rookie, people wanted him to play. Colt McCoy, whenever there's been young rookie quarterbacks on this roster over the last decade, two and a half decades, it has largely come with this mounting pressure to play that quarterback sooner rather than later. And I do understand, in today's NFL, I've talked about this, it is more common to see a rookie quarterback start, but that's mostly first round picks, right? Like your top end guys generally start sooner. They don't have to sit so much anymore behind somebody and learn. This quarterback room is built differently, but I also think that's why the Browns are built to handle any of the pressures and noise that's going to come with Shedeur Sanders being on this roster and him maybe not starting immediately. So what's interesting is the way the Browns handled the Deshaun Watson situation last year, where they handled him with kid gloves. And they basically said, we're not bringing back Joe Flacco because we're worried about the fan base being so infatuated with him, so in love with him as a player. And there's so much adoration for that guy, given what he did in 2023, leading the Browns to the playoffs and how well he played, and the offense was humming. And it did not look the same with Deshaun Watson. That I do think there was it's been well reported and covered that they were worried about all the extra that would come with it. And that if the second Deshaun struggled, there'd be this mounting noise to start Flacco over him. And they didn't know how he would handle that and how he would receive that, which is a flaw in the Deshaun Watson situation in general, that they were worried about his feelings, not doing what was best for the team necessarily. And that's what led us to where the Browns are right now. So in that respect, because of how they handled it last offseason, I can get where there's maybe doubts that they can handle another polarizing quarterback being in this room, sort of waiting in the wings to take over at some point or play at some point. But the reason I feel differently, and the reason I feel like they are ready this time around, is that this year, all bets are off when it comes to this quarterback room. There's no catering to Deshaun. The starting job is up for grabs. They're going to have an open competition. Deshaun's not even going to be part of the equation this year. You are basically you were given basically a ball of clay and told to build that ball of clay into whatever the best looking quarterback room you can come up with this offseason was. Maybe not the best, but the best given your resources and what you had at your disposal. And this is what the Browns came up with. Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. That's what the room looks like. And so because there's no expectation, and because there's no anointed quarterback that's going to start in this room that you're worried about his feelings with, The Browns don't have to sit there and stick with quarterback incompetence simply because they feel like they have to look right about the trade that they made for Deshaun Watson. That's what I feel like last year was. When Kevin Stefanski's coming out after watching his offense put up historically awful numbers, some of the worst in the history of football, from an efficiency standpoint and just everything. He's watching this unfold, and then he's telling you after week 5, week 6 game against Philly, he's telling you he gives us the best chance to win. They're sticking by him no matter what. That to me is I'm not saying Kevin Stefanski was told he has to start Deshaun, but I do think he understood in that moment what benching Deshaun meant. And so he was going to ride that thing out as long as he could. And then ultimately Deshaun got hurt and the decision ended up being made for him. He had to start somebody else at quarterback. But you don't have to worry about that this year at all. And so you don't have to stick with a quarterback that isn't getting the job done if he's not getting the job done. Like, he has eyes. He knows it was bad last year. Everybody knows it was bad last year. And so they've conceded that the trade is a flop. They're moving on. There's no set starter or franchise guy, which means it's going to be easier to pivot in the season, during the season, early in the season, late in the season, to a different quarterback if that quarterback simply isn't getting it done. It will be easier to pivot if things go south. If let's just throw out a scenario. Let's say Kenny Pickett starts the season as the starter. Okay. If he struggles and by week 5 you're like teetering, you maybe have like 1 or 2 wins and you're like, this offense just ain't cutting it. It's not that big of a deal for Kevin Stefanski to pull the plug and give, I'm just throwing this out there, Dylan Gabriel a try. It could be Joe Flacco, and the same thing would apply. Like, he can pull the plug at any moment because none of these guys are etched in stone as like franchise quarterbacks. Joe Flacco's too late in his career to be a franchise quarterback for some team, even though he's still got some game left. Kenny Pickett, I think that ship is largely sailed on him being a franchise guy, but he's going to come and try to revive his career the same way Sam Darnold did with the Vikings last year. So there's going to be opportunities, but I'm not going into it with any expectation that someone's going to keep that job the entire year. And because they don't have to cater to a pampered quarterback anymore, they can pivot at any time and everyone's going to understand. And there is the fact that, like, Kevin does have to still make the locker room believe that they're trying to win and stay competitive. And I understand that too, like, wholeheartedly. That's the coach's job. And that's one of the biggest things I think as to why Kevin still has a job is that seems like his players still are, the message is still getting through, I think, largely. And his players still generally, from my understanding, still believe in him as a coach. So if he loses the locker room, it's a different conversation. But he still has to try to maintain that locker room. But with this quarterback room in particular, it's going to be a lot more obvious if a guy has it or doesn't. And if Shedeur or even Dylan Gabriel are performing well at practice and guys see that, and conversely, if Kenny Pickett is struggling in games like the scenario that I laid out, it's pretty easy to sell to the team, hey, we got to make a change because you're seeing at practice what I'm seeing, and this just isn't getting it done. And so, yes, Shedeur is going to be here with a lot of glitz and glamour and attention. It is going to be one of the top stories in the NFL. Everyone's going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders and whether he's playing, whether he's not, what's happening, will he make his first start, will he not? It's going to be an ongoing conversation because he is a polarizing figure. But I think this time around, the Browns are ready to handle that because Kevin Stefanski can pitch it for a while as like, well, he's a 5th-round pick. We're trying to let him learn. And then at some point, if it's starting to look like the starter isn't getting it done, he has to pivot. It's going to be a lot easier to do that than it was last year. There's nothing guaranteed to any of these guys, and there's nobody that you feel like has to be the starter and that you're worried about somebody like Shedeur or even Dylan Gabriel breathing down their neck. Because all these guys, in my opinion, are going to get a chance to play this season, at least 3 of them, because I think someone's getting traded at the end of training camp. But that's why I believe the situation's being so much different than they were the last couple of years. This regime and this organization is actually ready for all that outside noise that's going to mount about play Shedeur. He needs to play, calling for him if there's a bad game out on offense and the crowd starts getting a Shedeur chant going or whatever it might be. I think they're actually equipped to handle it more so than they've probably ever been since they returned in 1999. If you haven't mentally prepared for Nick Chubb wearing a different uniform next season, you might want to start right now. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives you the flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands or for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with the freelance experts who deliver incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple as well. And within a day, you'll have multiple qualified candidates to choose from for your job opportunities. Instead of hiring full time, Upwork helps find affordable top tier freelancers to scale any business efficiently. Visit upwork.com right now and post a job for free. That's UPWORK.com, upwork.com, to connect you with the top talent to grow your business today. So if you haven't prepared yourself for Nick Chubb wearing and donning a different uniform in 2025 and maybe beyond, it's time to start, because there was something done by the Browns on Friday, late in the week, that basically signaled the end of Nick Chubb's time in Cleveland, by all accounts. And I was already there after the draft when the Browns drafted 2 running backs and essentially overhauled the entire running back room and said, all right, we're sort of blazing this new path forward with these 2 young guys that we feel really good about in the backfield, sharing the workload, all these different things. They already sort of signaled that anyway. But this, I think, was the final straw in determining that Nick Chubb probably won't be back. And what they did was they got Jerome Ford to accept a pay cut, reducing his 2025 salary from $3.4 million to $1.75 million. And yeah, that basically spells an end to the Nick Chubb's tenure here in Cleveland. Now, if you're wondering why that spells the end, here's the thing. Ford's willingness to accept a pay cut means that they wanted to, that their sort of plan was, we want to keep you around, but we're not going to be able to afford you at this number. So you have to, like, to keep you around, we want you to take this pay cut. And him agreeing to it means that essentially he's like, yeah, I'm guaranteeing my spot on the roster because I'm taking less money to be here. There was reporting that they also would have tried to shop Jerome Ford if he didn't accept the pay cut. And that's where it maybe would have opened the door for Nick Chubb to come back and still be a thing, because you still would have wanted another running back in this room if they had tried to trade him. But because he accepted the pay cut, it feels like a sign that, okay, he's here on the cheap, which means we're going to keep him around, especially in a season where money is tight for the Browns with the current salary cap situation they're in, given the Deshaun deal. And so they're going to have to, they're sort of navigating things as nimbly as possible. And so having Jerome Ford at $1.75 million is a solid number to, have your whatever number running back he is on the depth chart, have a running back that you're planning on utilizing on this roster and with this team. So listen, there's always a chance that, like, until Nick Chubb signs somewhere, sure, you could sell me that there's always a chance that he could come back, especially because we know how much he loves Cleveland. We know how much the Browns think of him and how highly they think of him, what he's meant to this organization, the city, the fans, everything. So I guess there always is that there's always going to be some hope that this isn't the end until he's officially signed somewhere else. And there's been some reporting out there that he's drawing interest from the Chicago Bears. There might be some other teams that maybe start, inquiring. Maybe he hasn't signed to this point because he was hoping to get back with the Browns, and now he's realizing himself the writing's probably on the wall, and now he is going to start, ramping things up in terms of signing with another team. Or maybe he'll just pull a Kareem Hunt and wait till the season starts and then sign somewhere. But that doesn't seem like something Nick Chubb wants to do, because he's more of like a let's get in and get to work type guy. But we'll see. But yeah, this is why, I think Andrew Berry tried to prepare us for this, prepare everybody for this back at the Combine when he officially announced that they were going to let Nick Chubb test the open market. That was him sort of testing the waters on, like, yeah, he's going to test the open market, and, we're going to let him go about his business. It was kind of it was the first step towards understanding, like, okay, It's not a guarantee that Nick Chubb is back. And if you think about what they were saying last year about Nick Chubb, it was a lot of nobody wants that to be the end of Nick Chubb in Cleveland. We don't want to see him go out that way. Nobody wants to see him go out. Like, it was all these different things in terms of they were guaranteeing you he was probably going to be back with the Browns this past season. And they eventually got that done, brought him back, did a restructured contract, and put a bunch of incentives in it. And he was here last year and then came back and played for the handful of games that he played in. So, yeah, like it's a completely different messaging this year when you get Andrew Berry sent to the combine. We're going to let him test the open market. And then on top of that, you get, like, every step of the way as members of this Browns staff have talked about Nick Chubb and his future, it has very much felt like they were eulogizing his Browns career. And I can even connect this back to, like, last week at the NFL draft. Catherine Hickman, assistant GM, she came out after the Browns in the second round took Judkins and was talking about, like, what he brings to the table and how excited they are for him and all this different stuff. And somebody asked her the question, what is this? Does this mean that Nick Chubb won't be back? Or, like, what does this mean for Nick Chubb? And she went into this her answer to the question was all about, everybody knows what Nick Chubb means to this organization. No one's ever going to be able to replicate that. We understand that like no one's going to come close to that. And it's an untouchable sort of being that he is in this town, and we love him. We always appreciate Nick. Like, it was all that wasn't verbatim. It was me sort of paraphrasing there, but the message she was sending was like, every time Nick Chubb comes up, everyone has to preface the conversation with how much they love him and how much he's adored and how nobody's ever going to come close to touching how idolized he was in this town and the being that he was in terms of representing Browns football in this town. And so I've already been getting the sense that this was going to happen. But then you take the two running backs and it's like, okay, that door's probably closed. But then this news on Friday, I think, really sealed the deal, even though he's still out there sort of waiting to sign somewhere. And again, I get it. As Browns fans, you should hold out hope that Nick Chubb should come back. I want Nick Chubb to come back. He's been one of my favorite players to cover, one of my favorite players to watch on Sundays. It is truly unfortunate that his Browns tenure is potentially coming to an end here the way that it is, with 2 season-ending injuries in back-to-back years. That just, you like this with everything he meant, as the Browns have talked about, and everything he means, and the fact that people, he made watching football in this town enjoyable, and he was the heart and soul of a team that had some exciting seasons and made some playoff appearances. Nobody wanted to see it end this way, but it does feel like we're at a point where we can start accepting that it is going to come to an end and that Nick Chubb will not be back with the Cleveland Browns in 2025 and maybe ever. Now, there's always a chance they circle back in future years, especially if he signs like a 1-year deal. But as things stand right now, that door feels like it's closed. Jerome Ford's going to be back in the fold, given he took this pay cut. You got the 2 rookies there. It is a new age in the Browns backfield, and I don't think it's going to include Nicholas Jamal Chubb, unfortunately. So if you haven't prepared yourself mentally for that, I think it's time to start. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because I, too, want to see Nick Chubb back with the Browns. I'd love to see him finish his career at the Browns. He's the type of player that you want that for, but it doesn't look like it's in the cards, given what the Browns have done this offseason and most recently in the last week or so with the draft they had and then this financial move with Jerome Ford. Thank God for Carson Schwesinger. That's all I'll say on the subject of Devin Bush's recent off-field issue. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work and taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting a win easier. At Epicor, the all-stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes, also easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with a global vision, we'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier finds the lane. Discover your success at easier with Epicor. That's www.easierwithepicor.com. All right, so Devin Bush was arrested on Sunday night in Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh, where he does still have a residence. Still a lot of details that need to come out. We know that he has a preliminary hearing in Allegheny County on May 20th. I also read before recording the show via CBS Sports that apparently, and the charges, by the way, are simple assault and harassment, which he was arrested and charged with. His girlfriend reportedly told police that he had pinned her against a massage table and destroyed her phone following a verbal altercation. Police records indicate Bush later admitted to smashing the phone but denied any physical harm to his partner. So as of now, it's just a lot of it is hearsay. It is what the police report is saying. We don't know Bush's side of the story. How the Browns handle these things generally is they don't talk about it. They let the legal process play out. If I had $1 for every time I heard Kevin Stefanski say we're going to let the legal process play out, last year in talking about the Mike Hall Jr. Arrest situation that transpired early on in his time with the Browns, then I would be a very, very rich man at this point, because it was it was quite often. It was pretty much every day he was getting asked about it, he was answering with that same response. So they're likely to let the legal process play out, see what happens from here. But what's interesting about this is a week ago, as everybody kind of wondered, well, why go running back? And then they start reading tea leaves on like, hey, JOK, is this maybe is a sign he's not going to be ready next year at the start, at least not at the start of the season or whatever. And I think there's some validity in that. Andrew Berry dispelled that during the draft. He said they would have taken Carson Schwesinger whether JOK was healthy or not. I think they still, in the back of their minds, were sort of planning ahead on this, especially at a position that they don't normally address, especially that high in the draft in previous years. It was time you start to restock the cupboards at linebacker. So I get the thought process there, but I do think the JOK situation is in the back of their minds. And now it feels like that pick makes even more sense. Not that they knew this was coming necessarily, because it sounds like it happened on Sunday, but the idea that like this team, has always been sort of shorthanded at linebacker, and they're looking for somebody who can come in as a young guy, give you some hope for the future there, be a rangy guy that can cover all over the field. He's pretty aggressive and in his ability to read things and attack. And so that pick all of a sudden looks brilliant. Like if you were doubting the pick to begin with, it looks better than it might have to you a couple weeks ago. I understood it, even though I thought, you wanted, given that the state of this offense, maybe it was time to go more offense with a lot of these early picks. And they did that with some of them, but not all of them. But regardless, adding somebody like Schwesinger now feels like a major win. And the value feels even better because you might not have Devin Bush depending on how this process plays out. Now, I'm totally speculating here on potential suspensions and things, but he will be held to the personal conduct policy. There could be suspension from the NFL, whether he's found guilty or not. That sometimes plays a role in these things. If the case is dismissed, like it was with Mike Hall Jr., Mike Hall ended up having to serve a suspension. He had to miss one extra game after he spent, I think, 4 weeks on the commissioner's exempt list. And then he finally came back. The same thing could happen here, depending on how, again, the legal process plays out. We'll let that happen. But if he faces suspension, like it thins out an already thin linebacking group for the Browns. And so Carson Schwesinger, that pick is looking better by the day just because of the nature of this situation that just transpired over the weekend, which was, again, not something I'm obviously I think was on the Browns' radar by any stretch, but still something that's unfortunate that they now get to sort of feel like they made a valuable pick in Schwesinger to bolster that room at a position of need, and you might be down another guy potentially for a stretch of time, including maybe JOK missing some time. Now, we don't know how many games it would be and all these different things. And again, there's no clear indication that he's going to get suspended or that type of punishment is looming here. Legal process, like I've been saying. But yeah, like it stinks too, because Bush filling in for JOK last year was actually like really solid. He had, I mean, if you look at his PFF numbers, he was pretty highly graded in terms of like being a fill-in back or fill-in linebacker who comes in, has to fill a very important role on this defense. he did a pretty good job, all things considered. And it was part of the reason why the Browns brought him back, because they felt like he was somebody who knew the defense, knows what his responsibilities are. If he needs to play because of injuries and whatnot, they knew they could count on him. They knew they could rely on him. Couldn't necessarily rely on him off the field in this situation. And so now they might have a situation where they're even thinner at that spot. And that's where I say thank God for Carson Schwesinger, because he's going to come in and maybe have a chance to really make an impact early on if JOK is injured and misses any time, and if Devin Bush faces any sort of suspension for this as well. But again, we will see how the process plays out. We will see if there's anything that any sort of punishment that does get handed down. But for now, that Carson Schwesinger pick, while questionable, I think, on draft weekend, and leaving some people feeling a little bit disappointed, because I think people wanted offense at pick 33, or thought the Browns would go offense at pick 33. It feels like, sitting here today, it actually could be something that works out immensely for the Browns, not just because he could be a really good player, but because he might have to be sort of thrust into action quicker, and you feel like you might have a pretty solid player already stepping up to play, given just the state of that room and some of the current situations going on, both injury related and now legally. So we'll see. Something to keep an eye on. Nothing too crazy, because it's not like Devin Bush. It's not like you're losing, if he is suspended, a cornerstone player or anything. But this is the time of year where I think you start to worry about off the field stuff with your team. It's always that weird. I mean, usually May, it's not as bad, but like June, July is where you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, you're just praying all your players stay out of trouble and on your favorite team, and get to training camp, and then you can kind of just go on with your business. But we have an early one this year for the Browns, as Devin Bush was arrested and charged. Again, a lot of information still to come, but I did sort of have a moment of saying to myself, okay, well, good thing they drafted Carson Schwesinger in case they're sort of shorthanded there for a little while to start the season, which could potentially happen. So that pick not looking as bad as maybe some thought. Not that it was a bad pick. I thought it made sense, but I think it did leave some people scratching their heads a little bit. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thanks for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. More to come this week, including which Browns rookie has a chance to make the biggest impact in year one. I'm sure a lot of people are going to think Shedeur Sanders. You might have a different answer for you. So you'll find out on another episode this week. If you hit that subscribe button to make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See you.